the founder and CEO of Jawbone. Morning.
Morning.
Let's jump right into it. People talk about wearables now every roughly 30 seconds.
15.
Yeah, we're down to 15, pushing for 10. You actually have been in the wearable business, though, for 10 years.
Yes.
Which makes you a very longer. Yeah. You're so wise. So, no, but with that sort of 10-year head start.
We've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to ask you. What have you learned about wearables in terms of what works and also what doesn't?
Yeah. I think that, like, I was jokingly saying that we've made all the mistakes, and I think candidly we actually have. And, we learned a lot along the way that things like designing to solve a problem really matters, right? It's not just about sort of taking technology and trying to find something that people care about. You got to really hone in on what the user problem is that you're solving, because it's something that people wear, and it matters a lot, right? It's a personal choice. There is no one size fits all, and it starts at the product experience level all the way down to the technology and the atoms. You've got to design the electronics, circuitry, all of that to sort of be incredibly power efficient. You've got to put together a package that's really simple, easy to wear. That's a lot harder than people realize, even down to material science. We had an interesting problem on the first generation up where we were using medical grade plastic, which is something that we've always used in our products. Because it's on your body, you want it to be sterile, you don't want these things to get dirty. But then when we had this sort of 24/7 wearability around up, we were exploring and we integrated a lot of hypoallergenic materials. Well, guess what? Hypoallergenic materials aren't terribly waterproof. But this is something that you need to be waterproof. So you have all of these series of trade-offs that are very, very complex. And you're putting, sort of full-blown computers into these incredibly small packages. You've got to bend, you've got to sort of be along for the ride of your life. So there's a lot that you learn at an experience level all the way down to technology. It's hard.
You were saying that you have to design to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the problems you've chosen to try to solve.
Yeah.
With the devices you've made.
So, and the first product we did, which was the headset. The big part of it for us was we saw that as there's a sort of explosion of mobile phones, people were using them everywhere to communicate, which would replace. I mean, we started this company, people were still using landlines, and we watched the transition of landline telephony to mobile telephony, just at a voice level, right? And all of a sudden, people had all this freedom to make calls everywhere, but all of a sudden they realized that, there was noise issues, they didn't feel comfortable talking in places, and they truly didn't have the freedom that was the promise of being untethered, because the quality equation that they had in the landline environment didn't move with them. So our premise was like, look, if we can give them that same landline audio quality experience wherever they are, that was a big deal. It turned out to be a big deal, right? But we had to get in a package that was, really wearable, beautiful. I think that when I started working with Eve Bahar in gosh, it was like 2002, 2003, there were 4 guys in the studio in South Park here in the city. And it was the first time that we had sort of mind level saying, like, okay, we've got this great technology that enables this communication everywhere. And because you're going to put it on the face, you've got to really think about it almost as jewelry. You've got to sort of approach it from that perspective. There's got to be an emotional connection with user from a design perspective. And so that was really the beginning of that journey of understanding how you design in a wearable context.
Now, you started with earpieces.
Correct.
You've since moved on and become quite famous for wearable, sort of personal data devices.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about the decision and the process to come to develop something like the Up.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I mean, the first sensors that we used a lot of sensors in the headset product. Those sensors were accelerometrics and things like that were designed to be applicable for communications purposes. Well, guess what? It turns out that you can use those same sensors to get a lot of other information about the user. And so at an electronic level, at an understanding about the materials and how you integrate them and how you put the whole package together, there was a lot of commonality. We thought, okay, there's this one application set that we're solving in the body. Could we go solve a different application set? And what we found in sort of the health and wellness space is that people care. They care a lot. And it's big. It's a big emotional thing. Everyone wants to fundamentally be better, whether you're a performance athlete or a housewife. Everyone wants to sort of be better than they are. So I think we've struck a chord there. It's been interesting. It's been fun.
Now, I mean, besides the development of hardware, you're spending a lot of time on the software side of the equation as well, in particular with something like the app, because obviously you can track a lot of data, and you do.
Yeah.
But that's not enough, is it? I mean, you have to put it into some sort of a
Yeah,
context.
it's interesting you said. I mean, we kind of came up, the history of the companies, we started with kind of algorithms, noise cancellation algorithms, DSP algorithms that then we put into a physical product as a way of getting that out because we thought that was the best way to get to the user. And so we kind of backed into the hardware thing early. It wasn't as easy to do hardware. And now we really see ourselves as sort of this kind of leading company in the whole integration of hardware, software, and data, and putting a lot of different disciplines together in ways that haven't been put together. So we feel like we're kind of at the tip of that era, pushing that notion together. And again, we see each of these as elements against solving that bigger user problem. Right? So we sort of say, like, here's the problem, let's solve for the user. And then how do we deploy a piece of hardware that creates engagement into our software and services ecosystem that then, produces a lot of data that's useful back to the user once you process it. So it's a sort of virtuous cycle, if you will. And I talked a little bit about this, recently publicly, but we've seen that actually when you have a piece of hardware that someone can work 24/7, you create this incredible engagement. I think we have an average of 22, 23 hours of engagement a day, whereas you compare that to sort of a YouTube or Facebook where it's minutes a day, or Google which is minutes a day. We've got this engagement hours a day, most of your day, and that produces incredible retention in the system, off the charts versus sort of some of these mobile application uses where people come in and they kind of ease it out, but the hardware sort of keeps them in, and then you continue to look value. And once you have the data, you can start to kind of create a picture for people around how all this information flows to each other that's relevant to them, and it's very individualistic, and then how they can sort of go into their day and have sort of a smarter role. I've talked a little bit about this.
Well, right, and that was sort of my next question to you, because right now, with something like the app, it captures all of this information that's going on in you and around you,
Right.
and then provides you with contextualized information that hopefully helps you make better decisions, make better choices. But there is another implication for all of this as more and more devices, and I hate to get into sort of that phrase, Internet of Things, but I will because it is a useful shorthand.
Yeah.
But can you tell me a little bit about how that works in Internet of Things context?
Well, one of the big things that I think, or when we think about the Internet of Things, is first of all, we totally agree that everything's going to be smart with computing power, sensors in it, and wirelessly connected. But in today's world, it's a big mess, right? You've got your thermostat smart, your refrigerator smart, your alarm clock is smart, your smoke alarm, your home alarm, your cable TV, and none of it talks to each other, right? None of it synthesizing, none of it understands the context of you. And so ultimately, we think it has to go sort of from the thinking has to evolve from the Internet of Things, where it's just a bunch of smart things, to really being about you, sort of this Internet of you. When you shift that thinking, if you think about the role of wearables, within that, we think it's ultimately the job of the wearable to, smart as your thermostat ever can be, it fundamentally doesn't know if you're hot or cold, right? And so we can tell it that information. We can say, hey, you know what? The person is hot because they're sick, they went for a run, it's hot outside, each of which is triggered a different response, right? So I think there's a need for some connective tissue, some organizing principle around all these smart things, and I think it needs to all be in service of the user. And I think that wearables will ultimately provide that kind of context engine going forward, right? So we can tell you what music you should listen to if you want to work out at a certain cadence, or what temperature your thermostat should get set to so you fall asleep faster and stay in deeper sleep, right? This is where all of that correlation goes. It leads to sort of more intelligent, smarter life, but all of these smart things are working for you, right? Because right now it's sort of like, well, you're working for it, trying to figure out what app is synced to what app. It's difficult.
And this is, something that stays upon your body becomes the link by which all these other things gain all that information and begin to automate themselves.
That's our sort of fundamental long-term view, is that these things have to be that context, the right thing to be that context, right? Because it's on you 24/7. It has the richest context of you, much richer than what your phone can do in terms of signals on the body. You don't sleep with your phone, hopefully you don't sleep with your phone. But you do sleep with this device, right? Which has totally different implications for how you design it, the battery power, all of that stuff. But then when you have that context related, like we should tell your car in the morning that you didn't sleep well last night, that you're not as alert as you should be, right? And then that system should respond accordingly, then understand you and be ready to adapt itself to you. So this is where we see it going. I think that's the ultimate goal of wearables. And the health and fitness applications are wonderful, and they're pulling a lot of people in space. And I think once you have them, you can do a lot more with it, right? That enriches their experience.
When thinking about the design of your products, and let's continue with the up for a second, because you were saying like there are things that can do that your phone can't.
Right.
And then there are things your phone can do
Yeah.
that it can't.
Correct.
And so, I mean, like, for example, you've never put a display
Right.
on an up.
Yeah.
And that's a choice that others have.
Yeah.
But you've made that choice not to. So can you tell me a little bit, for example,
It's
why?
simple. I think you have most people today have a pretty amazing display
Right.
in their pocket, whether it's an OLED or a Retina.
Right.
You have an amazing display, and so if you can use that for really good information access, I don't think that the stuff that we're tracking today necessarily needs a display. It's sort of looking backwards, so you can look at it on your phone, get a lot more rich context, etc. Right?
Because there seems to be, in some corners of the world, there's a kitchen sink approach to this, which says, we can put everything on your wrist, or we can put everything over on your head, we can put everything, I'm just saying.
Right.
And, but what you're sort of describing is more right tool for right job.
Yeah, I mean, I think that reading email up here is really jarring, hard to do versus looking at it on a bigger display, being able to navigate. Right? I think there's a big difference between a 3-inch display and a 5-inch display when consuming a lot of text like that or visual information that you don't necessarily want to do here. But if I knew that I could look at you and say there's your birthday today, or some other important contextualized information immediately, or these classes could adapt to my changing eyesight, things like that. That would be great.
Context.
So it's solving the right problem, right?
Right.
And I think that's the key, right? Is these devices need to solve it.
Well, I think we're almost out of time. Thanks, Hosain.
Great, thank you.